Hey guys, this is Andrew Swihart again, giving you some freelance business advice for the freelancer out there who is learning this career the hard way, which is basically you just dive in feet first and swim for your life. And so I went through that, and 20 years later, I've learned a few things, so I thought I would share them with you. Um, this particular topic we're going to talk about is getting paid. So you agreed to do a project and you finished the project and now you want to get paid. Well, there's a couple things to consider. Okay, first of all, what kind of client is this? And now, when I mean consider, I mean before you finish the project, when you're starting, keep this in mind. Okay, when you're working for an individual, say like somebody who wants, their kid wants a music video, or they want you to paint a picture that's going to go with their couch for their front room. The first thing that you should be doing is you should be entering into a contractual agreement, okay? And that agreement will outline when you get paid. And there's usually two ways that people plan payments. As far as artists goes, you can either do half up front and half when it's done, because you're probably going to have to buy supplies, paints and whatnot, or if you're going to be sitting in front of your computer, you're going to be turning down other jobs while you work on there. So you have to think about these things. So you're going to want to ask for half up front and half when it's done. The other thing you can do in that same scenario is you can do a third, and a third. You never want to start working on a project with an individual without getting some compensation up front, because if everything goes south, which it can from time to time, you need some compensation for what you've done. Even if you messed it all up. Hey, they hired you. Unfortunately, that was their mistake. And hopefully you'll never make that mistake again. But you do deserve some compensation because you worked on their project. Now, what I typically do in those cases is I send them an invoice, or once the contract is signed, they immediately give me some money up front, and that's just part of the deal. And if they don't want to abide by those agreements, then they're either really not sure of your capabilities and you haven't done a very good job selling yourself for the job, or they don't plan on paying you. So you might want to think about that. So that's for the individual. The other type of client that you're going to work for is a studio, a larger business, something that has multiple people working there, and they're probably going to 1099 you, which means that you are not on payroll. You're a freelancer. Okay, this is the freelance, how you get work freelancing podcast or video. So that's probably what you're going to be. And what I do is every 2 weeks I will send them an invoice for the last 2 weeks of work. If it's a bigger company, I'll usually do the first 2 weeks without requesting a payment, and typically they're paying you per hour. So every 2 weeks I'll sit down, I'll list all the hours that I worked, and a lot of times I'll list what I worked on, so they, just to kind of help them, like, yeah, I remember that thing, I worked on that, I worked on that, I worked on that. And then I will send them the invoice, and I will usually say that I would like payment within 15 days of them receiving the invoice. Now, some companies don't do 15 days. They do what's called net 30 or even net 60, which is really irritating. And basically what that means is they're not going to get paid for a while either. So they have a client who's requesting this, and then they're farming out the work to you. So they're not going to get paid for however many days, and then eventually they'll get around to paying you. So that's how net 30 and net 60, and sometimes businesses operate on net 90, which seems kind of exhausting waiting for that money to come in, but that's just how they do it. So you always want to be invoicing people when you've done 2 weeks worth of work in those kinds of situations. And if you look online and find freelancing invoices, there's a lot of information out there, and a lot of different people have great ways of doing it. So, and that's how you get paid. Now, if you ever find yourself in a situation where someone is not paying you, and I have found myself in that situation before, and it wasn't even because I didn't complete the project, it was because the client fired them. And my work was just fine, but the client fired them. you could be in trouble. So rather than going to court and dragging it out, which is just a huge waste of time and a huge hassle, and unless they owe you many thousands of dollars, I wouldn't even bother. Um, if you ever find yourself in that situation, go meet with the people, sit down, and work out some kind of compromise, because that might be the only way you'll see the money. If they're out the money and they can't pay you, and projects get expensive, you could be talking $10,000, $15,000 on some of these things for a freelancer to show up and do a bunch of work for a few months. Um, Go to them, sit down, talk it out, come up with a solution. Don't start screaming and yelling at them. It wasn't their fault. Sometimes clients can just be extremely fickle. There could have been a breakdown in communication that had nothing to do with even the person that you're speaking to. So work it out. Come up with maybe a payment plan. That's what I did. I let the guy do a payment plan. He paid me every penny, and we're still friends to this day. So anyway, that's some helpful little tidbits on how to get paid. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. AndySwy.com is my website. My professional website is swihartstudios.com. And I hope you guys have a very Merry Christmas.